I won't go in nearly as much detail in discussing the book Mastery by Robert Greene as I did with Viktor Frankl's book Man's Search for Meaning, I find it necessary to mention this incredible book as it pertains to one of the goals in logotherapy, that of finding your life's task. Obviously, if you're in the middle of a major depressive episode or some issue that has taken over your life, finding your life's task may not be in the forefront of your mind as much as just surviving the moment. But remember, what happened in the case of Viktor Frankl, in the immediate loss of his family, and with his future uncertain, he had to quickly find a way to cope and survive the times. His immediate cause was love. He wanted to see his wife again, and hoped she was fighting for survival as hard as he was, so they could be reunited in the future. But he knew even if he lost her, there had to be something else that motivated him to his final moment, whenever it came. This thing was his life's task, the thing that became so important to him to accomplish and to see through to its finality. He would be motivated to keep breathing and keep fighting. In your case, it's this thing that will give you your why, your thing that will allow you to stand up with courage to whatever is plaguing you. How do you find this thing? Well, first off, don't confuse it with your occupation. This most often is what you do to pay bills. Your goal is to merge this thing with your occupation and do a work that is beyond you. To do this, you need to journey inward and find what motivates you. I asked myself one day, what's the thing I would do for free? If I didn't need to work anymore to pay bills, and I wanted to do a work for fulfillment, what would that work be? What comes naturally to me? The answer is different for everyone, but money shouldn't be the motivator here. If you love basketball and you're really good, do you see yourself becoming pro? Or do you see yourself teaching underprivileged kids how to play? Do you love animals? Do you love people? Do you wish you could do more to help others with mental health struggles? It's this exact path that led me right here. 4 a.m., writing the script for this video, knowing it may never get many views, but it's written down and soon to be up on YouTube forever. For my kids to see one day, should I not be here, or my mind lost to old age. That purpose helped me to see beyond myself. And let's be honest, when you're going through depression, we are extremely selfish. We can't help anyone with anything, and we don't want to go anywhere. It's understandable, but deadly. And the way we break that cycle is not by being self-centered and selfish with our uniqueness. Greene speaks of our incredible individuality and uniqueness in his book Mastery. He says, no one throughout the billions of years of our planet's existence has ever come into existence quite like us. We are the first of our kind and the last. This genetic uniqueness, coupled together with our completely unique life path, makes us, and only us, the most qualified to do the thing that we are choosing to do. Armed with the knowledge that only we can do this thing, it becomes our responsibility to get it done. He says to accomplish this, we must first put ourselves on death ground. When armies are surrounded, they fight harder than those surrounding them because they have no choice but to fight like hell because running isn't an option. Viktor Frankl did this very thing, knowing he may not survive the day he got started right away. Knowing his notes could be found and published one day, just the same way he found a note written by the previous owner of his garments he was given to wear. The man that owned his garments was killed and his body was stripped and burned, but his clothes were given right to the next incoming prisoner, in this case, Viktor Frankl. In the pocket was a handwritten note with a prayer. In this fashion, and in the fashion of the writing of Emperor Marcus Aurelius, posthumous writings could be the thing that survives and endures and reaches and helps many. In this way, adopting a mindset that what we do matters and help us choose a path that matters to us, carry it out as best as we can, as long as we can. Finding our life's task or purpose is important whether or not we are suffering. Leonardo da Vinci said on his deathbed, just as a well-filled day brings blessed sleep, so a well-employed life brings a blessed death. We do not get to choose when we leave this existence, but in those final moments, what could possibly offer us some consolation to our departure from our lives? We cannot take our money with us, nor would we wish that we would have fought harder to convince someone of our religious or political ideologies. What matters most is that we accomplished some deed greater than us, that we left the world better than we entered it, that we did what we needed to do, that we said what we needed to say, that we became who we needed to be. This ties in line with the quote by Friedrich Nietzsche, who said, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." Can we think of a better example of a man who lived this axiom to its letter than the man Jesus Christ? His why, or his work, to change the archaic laws of the Israelites that were burdensome on the people, led him to become a visionary. His views and teachings were so progressive, they disturbed the establishment terribly. Although the Pharisees and Sadducees hated him, they could not lawfully put him to death, as Israel was a Roman state. Once they found cause, however, to accuse him of political state crimes, he was tortured and put to death. Interestingly, however, he had a chance to deny the allegations, but doing so would have compromised his cause. His purpose was to facilitate change to the Jewish laws. Denying his identity as the new leader of the Jews, a spiritual title, not a political one, would have weakened his movement nonetheless. So, he saw his task down to the very end and endured a torturous death. Whether you're religious or not, or Christian or not, anyone can see the value of being dedicated to a cause so vehemently it makes any suffering bearable. Viktor Frankl writes in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, suffering ceases to be suffering once meaning is attached to it. The great thing about this ideology, though, is that it not only makes an untimely death or grim diagnosis bearable, but it makes your everyday life more happy and fulfilling. When I was diagnosed with ADHD very late in life, many of my life's problems began to make a lot of sense to me. Why was I so prone to start things with so much fiery enthusiasm, only for it to die out in a few hours, weeks, or months? This is an extremely jarring experience, to feel the highs of eagerness to do something new, only to feel contempt for it shortly after. The book Mastery is full of examples of people throughout history that led similar lives to you, if this has been your experience. Leonardo da Vinci is known as the quintessential Renaissance man. He began as an artist, but in order to be a better artist, he began to study nature and science, to understand the anatomy of the things he was drawing. This led him to take on mathematics, engineering, inventing. Many of his works were never even completed because of his affinity to get lost in research and become distracted by his own many passions. Despite this, however, he is one of the most notable figures throughout history. Sometimes we too can have the propensity to jump from thing to thing. Maybe our life path hasn't been the most direct or stable, but with age comes wisdom and experience, and we shouldn't look down on these experiences we've had. Eventually, we can, through retrospective thinking, find what it is we really love and weave all of our knowledge into something truly meaningful in our lives and in the lives of others. If you're still very young, you can adopt the mindset to figure out what your life's work is. Jocko Willinks, an ex-Navy SEAL, author, and podcaster, gives the advice that if you're lost in the woods, you can become paralyzed by the number of choices you can make and end up doing nothing. Better, he says, to just start walking. Once you start walking, you'll gain new information that will affirm that you're walking in the right direction, or give you signs it was a bad choice and you can course correct. Eventually, while walking through the wilderness, you'll come across a mountain that will give you a better perspective, or a stream that will lead to a river that will lead to a city. To be young and lost is common, but you can choose to be preemptive in learning about yourself and view every job as valuable information in the same way that walking in the wilderness is. If your walk leads you to flipping burgers temporarily, this is such a mindless task you can use your freed up mental state to think deeply about your own nature and learn about others and the social interactions people engage in that either help or harm them. Every experience during this time in your life is valuable information that is lost if all you do is lament and complain about being a slave to someone else's cause. Once you have an idea of what you'd like to do, realize that it generally takes about 10,000 hours to attain mastery at something. It took you about 2 years to walk, something you can literally do in your sleep now. Trust that the process of your learning will eventually lead to small breakthroughs that accumulate exponentially over time. You'll become good enough at something sooner than 10,000 hours, but you'll be able to do it blindfolded once you've attained mastery at it. Some people get things faster than others. Mozart was a child prodigy that could play the piano blindfolded in front of monarchs at the age of 4, but he didn't get to do what he wanted to do until he was in his 30s, which was write his own operas with sometimes controversial themes. Others take a steeper learning curve when learning something new. Remember that if you are envisioning yourself rocking an electric guitar in front of thousands and having money and fans, you'll first have to learn how to play Mary Had a Little Lamb, broke, and in front of a mirror. Be okay with starting at the bottom, and be okay with being bored and terrible at what you're doing for some time before getting good at it. Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu said, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step." Once you've attained mastery at something, find a way to make this thing meaningful and be charitable with it. Doing so will help you live a fulfilled life, and should you be faced with the final enemy, death, you can smile in its face, knowing that you did what you needed to do, you said what you needed to say, and you became who you wanted to be.